also to chair this session. Since time is very short, I will not say more and instead try to give the maximum time to our speakers, approximately 10 minutes, please. I will give you a warning before the time expires. So I will first like to ask Ms. Leonie Kloster to talk to us. Please welcome Leonie Kloster.
Presentation. Don't know how that works.
All right.
My computer is letting me down a little bit, has been letting me down a little bit, so my presentation is in PDF. I hope you don't mind. My name is Leonie Klooster. I'm from Leiden. I studied in Leiden, graduated 7 years ago. I would consider myself, Leiden, the Netherlands. I would consider myself an artist with an academic background, or vice versa. I say this because I think it's important for you to understand who I am and how I try to switch in my life between different types of language. The language of music and poetry is a different language than the language of science, and they influence each other mutually. The red line in everything I do is, I think I could say, spirituality, and the way that people try to make sense of their lives. And I'm very interested in the to and fro movement between the inner world of feelings and thoughts and the outside world, people around us, and the things outside of ourselves that influence us. The paper that I'm presenting is called 21st Century Self-Proclaimed Sovereignty, Worldly Anger or Spiritual Liberation. It's a confrontation with Neoplatonism and Gnosis. I won't have enough time to go too deeply into this confrontation. I would prefer to give you sort of image or an idea of what the group of sovereigns, individual sovereigns, is, what they are, and what we are dealing with. Because I've studied this group of people that worldwide call themselves sovereigns on an individual basis, and for them sovereignty is more than just a philosophical concept. It's rather a lifestyle or a belief system. And they use the law, the language of law, as a way to express themselves. I compared the main concepts of their belief system with concepts that are similar and we find in early Gnosticism and Neoplatonism, like salvation through knowledge, contemplation, remembrance, and the concepts of evil, slavery, truth. The question that I try to answer is the 21st century self-proclaimed sovereign rather the angry conspiracy theorist who got entangled in the worldly matter he is raging against, or the spiritual, aware role model endowed with conscience and reason who ultimately aims to coincide with a divine source? Now, this question is a little bit too complicated maybe to understand if you don't know enough about the subject. I mean, this group of individual sovereigns yet. But what is important for now is to get these two images. The conspiracy theorist, the angry conspiracy theorist on the one hand, and the more spiritual, aware, autonomous role model on the other hand. And I have come to the conclusion that the sovereign that I'm talking about is neither of them and both at the same time. At least it's very hard to give a clear answer to the question. In my paper I call these group of people a virtual community, and that is because they share values and information through online sources like podcasts, websites, and videos, YouTube videos, blogs. The information they share is mainly about these three questions. Why should you want to be sovereign? How to become sovereign? and they share their own experiences, like how did I defend my sovereignty in court, or how did I take a governmental institution to court. And the reports about those experiences, they are quite extensive and detailed. For these people, it's important to inspire others with their experience and their knowledge. Now, the answer to why you would want to become a sovereign is because we are in this world treated like slaves, but we were born free, and we want to be free again. And this relates to the second question, how to become sovereign. It's by claiming, first remembering that we are born sovereign, and then claiming our sovereign within this framework of language, of law, of positive law, mainly. Oh yeah, at the bottom of this slide, I say the Dutch network of sovereigns, of which I met a few people. They also have physical meetings, so it's not only virtual. And I named these two people, Mark Passio and Frank O'Collins, because it would be interesting for you maybe to look them up after the conference. Mark Passio is someone who has been referred to a lot on these websites and blogs of sovereigns because of his lectures about natural law and his take on it. And Frank O'Collins is the founder of Ucadia, and Ucadia is an alternative political system that is totally based on divine law. Now, in the definition of sovereignty, it's always been a bit difficult to pinpoint what exactly it means for a start, but also what or in what way we justify sovereignty. So what is it that gives the sovereign its sovereignty? And in the 21st century individualist sovereignty, this justification has two sources or two grounds. As I told you already, the first is the sovereignty is a natural state of being, so we are sovereign. It's not something, it's natural law. We are sovereign. Important here is that is often referred to the first article of the Human Declaration of Rights, the Declaration of Human Rights, Universal Declaration of Human Rights, sorry, where it says that we are humans endowed with conscience and reason. So the sovereign believes that we have the capacity to decide over good and evil, to think for ourselves, and through reason also reach these higher truths, these higher natural law, this higher divine law that is universal and absolute for everybody, the same. And of course the capacity to govern ourselves, because here sovereignty is self-government, autonomy, self-mastery. And the second justification is the claim, because it's not enough to know or to be born. I mean, to be born sovereign is not enough, because when we don't recognize it or acknowledge it as such, we will not be treated as a sovereign human being. So it is important to claim our sovereignty. First, remember that we are, and then claim it within this field of law and politics. This takes me to 4 ground beliefs of the sovereign worldview, and that there are 2 realities: truth on the one hand and fiction on the other hand. Truth is like a metaphysical reality. Fiction is, we have to understand it this way, it also exists, the fictional reality, but as a fiction. And that doesn't mean that we don't interact with it. We do interact with it. So it's definitely there and something we have to be aware of. Second ground belief is we have forgotten who we are, and we are therefore misled into slavery. Fourth, actions need to be taken to claim and maintain sovereignty, and knowledge leads to liberation. I've just 1 minute, a little less than 1 minute left, so I will give a few examples of these actions. and that is, I already said, claiming one's sovereignty. That goes through first claiming your name, the ownership over your own name, because it is believed that this name now is through birth registration owned by the government instead of you yourself. But it goes a lot further. There's also idealistic initiatives to raise an alternative health insurance, and a sovereign state has been raised. Maybe the most important is taking governmental institutions to court, and yeah, I would like to say so much more. I think I have to round it off. Maybe we will get a little bit deeper in questions or on a later stage of this conference.
Okay, this Mr. Gianluigi Segalerda, yes, APGC member. Please, the floor is yours. Okay. Yep.
Well, good afternoon. I would like to thank the organizing committee of the conference, the Jindal University, and of course also the APCC for the opportunity to speak at this conference. And of course I would like to thank you for your attendance. Hopefully you will be the same in number at the end of the conference, and you will be not too devastated by my exposition. I would like to begin with a quotation from Vico, which is at the very end of his work, his principal work, The New Science. I quote from the edition of The New Science of 1744, which was published 2-3 months after the death of Giovan Battista Vico himself. And I have decided to begin with this quotation because, in my opinion, it contains all we, in my opinion at least, we need in order to interpret the sense and the direction and the orientation of Vico. You can see, Vico says, to sum up, from all that we have set forth in this work, it is to be finally concluded that this science carries inseparably with it the study of piety, and that he who is not pious cannot be truly wise. That is, piety and wisdom are interconnected, are the same thing, and we will see why. This corresponds to a particular interpretation of Vico, and perhaps some of you or all of you will not agree with me, but let me speak. As a fundamental principle of my interpretation of Vico, I would say that I am of the opinion that providence and the action, the order, and the giving order of providence in history, in human history, should be given the priority in the interpretation of Vico. It is true that many aspects of Vico are relevant and important. The conception of the 3 ages of the humanity, of the, so to speak, corsi and ricorsi, that is of the recurrence of the periods of history, the theme, the subject of the science of mind and of the development of minds in the human history, of the natural rights of men and so on, are all of them, of course, very important concepts. Notwithstanding, it should not be forgotten that Vico expressly said that to be religious is the condition for being wise. Moreover, he clearly states, as we will see, from the very beginning of the new science, that the divine inspiration of the metaphysics is the basis for us to understand the succession and development of human history. There is no understanding, and there is no possibility of understanding of human history without the direct illumination coming from religion. There is no possibility either for understanding or for action or for the stability of a society without religion. These points come out in different parts of Vico's meditation and constitute, so to speak, a constant factor in Vico's meditation. Providence exists. Knowledge of the existence and of the operation of providence is necessary for the understanding, for our understanding of the human world. Not only for this, of course, but the point is that Vico wants to build up a theology of human events, a theology referred to human events. There are no really founded natural rights without reference to providence. The analysis of the frontispiece of the work, I would like to, which Vico exposes at the beginning of his own work, clearly shows that Vico wants to have God and providence as fundamental feature of his meditation, and that he wants to refer the human world to God. It is to be said that in Vico there is no particular optimism and no particular pessimism concerning the development of humanity. On the one hand, Vico is profoundly convinced that God exists and that God is a providence God. It's not an indifference, his God. Vico is making a rational theology, that is, he assigns its own research to the field of theology. He does not consider himself as being an historian, for instance, but a theologian. History is led by providence. At this point, Vico is profoundly convinced. The presupposition for understanding, for being wise, is to be religious. Only if you enter the perspective of religion, you can understand reality and you can understand the development of reality. Vico's interpretation of theology is similar to a new interpretation of the credo ut intelligam, that is, I believe in order to understand, in the sense that only through the acknowledgement of the existence of God and of a providence God, the human dimension can be understood. The initial condition of man could let think that Vico is rather pessimistic as to the nature of man. There is no doubt that the initial condition of man is a condition of violence. There is no golden age in Vico. There is no idealization of primitive ages. Primitive ages are ages of violence, and only of violence, of brutality. Of course, one could object that in spite of this condition of violence, the poetry, for instance, is possible only in the primitive ages for Vico. Notwithstanding, the age of youth of man is not an age of reason. The age of reason arrives after a long effort, after a long process of maturation. Men must reckon with their origins of violence, of brutality. They must be aware that they come from ages of brutality. Men must take into consideration that the danger of falling back into barbarous ages is always present. In a certain sense, Vico is exhorting men to responsibility all through his own work. He is exhorting men to the being conscious that the peril of degeneration is always possible. I would like to have a quotation, but shall I find it so that you can read it? You see, this is the intent of Vico. He says, in one of its principal aspects, this science must therefore be a rational civil theology of divine providence, which seems hitherto to have been lacking. For the philosophers have either been altogether ignorant of it, as the Stoics and the Epicureans were, the latter asserting that the human affairs are agitated by a deep, inexorable chain of cause and effect, or they have considered it solely in the order of natural things, giving the name of natural theology to the metaphysics in which they contemplate this attribute, it is the providence of God, and in which they confirm it by the physical order observed in the motions of such bodies as the spheres and the elements, and the final cause observed in other and minor natural things. By they how to have studied it in the economy of civil institutions, in keeping with the full meaning of applying to providence the term divinity, that is the power of divining, from divinari to divine, which is to understand what is hidden from man, the future, or what is hidden in the first and principal part of the subject matter of jurisprudence, namely the divine institutions, on which depend the human institutions which make up its other and complementary part. Our new science must therefore be a demonstration, so to speak, of what providence has wrought it in history, for it must be a history of the institutions by which, without human discernment or counsel, and often against the design of man, providence has ordered this great city of the human race. For though this world has been created in time in particular, the institution established therein by providence are universal and eternal. Philosophers have, up to now, seen only the half of providence, says Vico, since they have seen the providence only in the natural world and not in the civil world. Vico is convinced that providence, that the action of providence in the civil world, that is in the human history and is in the civil institution characterizing human history. The conception of theology is the conception of the civil theology, in the sense that this theology analyzes the providence and the action of providence in human history as a whole, and the civil institutions belonging to different ages of human history. The new science of Vico is the science of history. Vico wants to initiate a new dimension for science and a new dimension for providence. Science and providence have been interpreted, in the opinion of Vico, as being related to nature and to the order of nature. This means that providence has been considered as operating in the order of nature, in the organization and systematization of nature. Vico does not deny this aspect of the action of providence. Providence is the organized factor of nature, and nature is one field of the action of providence. It cannot be forgotten, though, in Vico's opinion, that the dimension of nature is not the only field of action and providence. Providence operates on human dimension, and in particular on the human history too, so that an analysis of providence, a theology applied to the human dimension, to the human history, is a theology of the civil institution of the human history. It is an analysis of the action of providence as to human history, as to civil institutions. On the other side, one cannot analyze history in its ideal and eternal organization, in its fundamental structures, without referring the development of history to the action of providence. On the whole, Vico's conception of providence is a radical modification of the conception of theology. I think I can end here, and we can speak freely in the discussion of other aspects. Thank you very much for your attention. Thank you.
Much. I would like now to invite Dr. Rek Rajchain to come and talk to us. He's assistant professor from ICFAI Law School, Hyderabad.
Yeah, ICFAI Law School.
Is that correct?
Afternoon to one and all. Here my topic is very different. Actually, everyone we were speaking about spirituality and spiritual mysticism and other thing. I would be just dealing it with the law, interacting with this particular aspect of it. That is heterogeneity of spirituality and the conclusion of the three concepts, liberalism, democracy, and human rights in the age of globality. Speaking to this, that the most important aspect when we look with regard to the introductional part, I'm just trying to skip up because all of us spoke about the spirituality and all these things as that. From spirituality point of view, two important aspects that we look is the soul and the spirit, and this is where we talk about it as such. And as spirituality is mostly misunderstood because most of the time we conclude it with the religion and then most of it, but today in fact is interchangeable and it is a very different aspect with regard to the human aspect. Now all those are being discussed and very oftenly we just talked about all those aspects as such. So thereby it makes us very clearly that spirituality today it's a very wider term and we are not just going to bind it to the abstract words of scholarly sermons as such. So as we don't have a widely singly approved definition with regard to the spirituality, because just one, it can say, it's a reality and the way of life that is centered around the spirit. So as today, it's very important because the definition part, as I've been telling you, is that these has been very important, which is revolving around the entire our lives, because it is the daily aspects that we are going to visualize it as such. So today, all that is connected, we are looking into is that happiness and this peace is because of spirituality. So the question states that the journey of spirituality begins with the urge to search the veracity, and thereby the spirituality developed in the context of the search for the answers. Now, this is an important thrusting point that I want to show you that what would be the devastating effect if the individual life and the prosperity of the nation is to survive. The thrust of the modern concept of these expressions of the governance of the country without spirituality would be not feasible. So hence, spirituality has to be approached or understood in a very, very broader approach than a parochial approach as such. And it is where spirituality today is considered to be an area of many perspectives, and it is very, very difficult to consign or precise as such. So let me relate these two important aspects that we talk about as the compatibility of spirituality and liberalism. Two questions. Is spirituality anything to do with liberalism? And the second question is how spirituality and liberalism associated. So these are two distinct terms which we talk about it, but they are very essential for human existence because they cannot be separated in any way of being as such. So concept of liberalism, it's very important because we have a different interpretations ranging from it, because even the aspect related to the liberal ideas, the world constitutions, all that we talk about it, the elimination of oppression, establishment of constitutional government, all is dealing with this thing as such. So the concept of spirituality is in many arena, we are talking about the self and the self aspect as such. So what is the philosophy of liberalism? The most important aspect advocating this liberalism is maximum liberty and a minimum control. This is the founder notion of what we call it as liberty and equality. So thereby, liberalism is having a different approach, which is talked about it as such. But when I look into this particular aspect as such, liberalism and spirituality walk hand in hand. The reason being is that both emphasizes the importance of equality and social harmony, and thereby spiritual expertise paves the way to the liberal thoughts and giving you more liberal political attitude. So liberalism and spirituality is a very important aspect. The new spirituality is breaking up the barrier of intercommunal relations which has been created by race, religion, nationality as such. So thereby, today, we are not going to be very religious intent. We are moving away from that particular thing. That's the reason why we are looking into the different aspect that is liberal aspect. Now, second aspect is compatibility of spirituality and democracy. Two questions arises the same thing. Does spirituality have anything to do with democracy, or is there a relation between both of the spirituality and democracy? The answer to is that in the global age, the spiritual democracy has to stay together. It has to equip together because we are living, we have a democratic system where the people are most important aspect as such, and that is why in the age of globalism, when we look into this, these are the very important which experiences for the human existence as such. So today, democracy is an extraordinarily challenging, because here it is considering the welfare of the people rather than the welfare of an individual. And in the case of democracy, it's more crucial because it is a citizen who has to decide and judge and examine the policies of the government and the leaders that they have elected. So here, when we look into the aspect as such, it is very important that it is beginning with the spiritual idea. I'm just keeping this particular because here is which we talk about where the democracy is looking into it. So we all talk about the principles of equality, accountability, responsibility, compassion, forgiveness, all this is, which is again related. So when all this are being looked into this thing, today we are coming out with the concept of what we call as spiritual democracy. It is nothing but an affirmation of believer to question the relevance of the dogmas of their communities. So thereby, if you look at the two concepts, sovereignty and the democracy, they are also very interrelated because both are very important to the democracy. Secularism and spirituality, they are complementary to each other. I'm not defining these two terms because whenever I talk about the spirituality, it's mostly religious aspect. So religious are nothing but where it is actually entering into the aspect. So I am confining myself to the secular spirituality. Secular spirituality is nothing but an adherence to the spiritual philosophy without adherence to the religion as such. Now, next aspect that I come out of is that because of shortage of time and the time that is being given, I have to rush up as such. Two questions important that I want to thrust here is, can spirituality, human rights be pooled? Is there any link between the spirituality, human rights? Because this is more which we can discuss. Actually, this can be a hottest topic for the discussion with regard to the today's debate as such. So spiritual, as person is going to be proclaimed that man is actually a trichomity of mind, body and spirit who is created in the image of God, and the contrary domain.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much to all the speakers so far. I will make it up by allowing some discussion afterwards. But now it is my great pleasure to introduce Dr. B.K. Chandrasekhar as a special address, and so far I felt very comfortable as a lawyer here, and now I look forward to seeing how maybe healing can also be a role of law. I don't know, we'll see. I would like to mention also that Dr. Shekhar is advanced yoga specialist and the creator of psychoneurobics, also an international mind and memory trainer. Would that be a memonist?
Yeah.
I think. And you also hold some record in the Guinness Book,
Yeah.
so please welcome Dr. Shekhar, and the floor is all yours.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Good afternoon, everybody. So it's my pleasure and grace to meet all of you and share the practical experience of spirituality in my life, especially. I suffered from cancer in 1999. I was diagnosed with not only cancer but hepatitis C, followed by cirrhosis of liver. So case was very terminal and doctors given up the hope. That time I didn't know what spirituality is. I had faith in God but lost the faith in God. So one day I was crying in front of God, "Where are you?" And I saw a divine light and heard the voice of divine telling me nothing will happen, your life is important. But I could not believe. Then I thought dream never come true. Then again I saw the light. I thought it is a hallucination. Doctor told that case is very terminal, and so doctors is telling the hope is not there, and I am hearing that nothing will happen. So this too is contradictory. So I couldn't believe. But third time I saw the divine light clearly and the communication established with that light. And you know, the first time I heard and had a conversation with the divine. The divine asked me that suppose your car get broken down, what will you do? I say that I'll take it for repair. Then he asked me, what will you do after handing your car for repair? Then I told I will wait. Then he asked, what is the quality required for waiting? I told patience. Then he told, that is why you are patient. Patient doesn't mean sick. Your body is sick, but you are patient. Your body is a car. This hospital is where this car is getting repaired. Doctors are like a mechanic. They are working on your car. You have no alternative but to wait with the patience. So that is the first time in my life I understood the meaning of patience. And from there, my journey of spirituality started, and I had a divine conversation, and through that, a new science is born called psychoneurobics. So psychoneurobics is a science I applied on myself and got healed, and now this science is being accepted by Indian universities and foreign universities, and being taught as a subject in master's degree and graduation degree. So you can see this was my photograph when I suffered from the cancer, and from there I survived. So the meaning of self I understood, the spiritual energy in light form. We are all energy, and this energy runs this body. Through the nervous system, you can see all organs are connected. You see, all organs are machine. This machine need minimum amount of energy for functioning. But this energy flows only through the mind. Your mind either can block the energy or make the energy to flow. So I'll give the practical demonstration. I designed the machine also. This is the machine I designed by which I can test your mind, how your mind is stable or it is destroying the energy. So this is the machine, and you can just put these two fingers, and that will tell the energy of your mind, whether it is balanced or imbalanced, how much is spiritual energy passing through your body. So how the energy flows, you can see the nervous system has been categorized into central nervous system and sympathetic and parasympathetic nervous system. And this nervous system is just like a hot wire and cold wire, and the junction is called the plexus, and that each plexus has a control, and that control is totally with the emotions. So that emotional control, emotional switches in Veda philosophy is called chakras. So I have a machine, this machine, which can check the chakra also of the body, your body is receiving the energy or not. So if I need just 2% to prove all these things, any volunteer can come. Okay, any 2%. Okay, fine. Okay. This is the machine that check your state of mind. Okay. What is like that? I'm just putting these two fingers here, and this is just telling 10 and 11. So just put your like on this. So it is 37. So, what is the difference between three of us? He is very, he has very low reading, he has high reading, mine was also 10 and 11. He is 2. Do you take any medicine or not? No medicine. Okay. So, he is more calm. Okay, the lower the reading, the more state of mind is stable. Okay, fine. Now, how is the spiritual energy flow in our body through mind? And what is the spirituality I learned through the divine? The main essence of spirituality is practicing of bliss, truth, peace, love, joy, purity, and willpower. These are the 7 emotions and basis of the spirituality. If you don't practice in your life, that is not the total spirituality. So, and I will show how it is, how it affects your body instantly. So, just turn around. Okay. So, I am just checking is the energy. Okay, this is either all plexus. This all plexus has a positive energy, and this is scientific instrument. This 2 is the negative pole, and the spiritual energy has a positive pole. So, if these 2 negative, I am putting it together, it will be separated automatically. It will never stay together. But if there is a positive pole in front of it, these 2 will be sticking together. So I will just put it here. You can see here. You can see. So here can you see there is a deviation. Heavy lunch. because yeah. So because energy is being consumed and low energy is there. Yeah. Okay, fine. Hands down. So you can see here's good energy. Okay, there is no deviation. So how physically it can be validated? I'll just show you. Okay. Now just you do like this. Just hand like this. This thumb should be inside. Okay. Fine. So thumb inside. Okay, fine. So here I just press it down. We will not let it go down. Okay, ready? So I am just pressing, hands not going down. It means energy is flowing, and that is called neuromuscular strength. Energy, spiritual energy coming, and that is a neuromuscular strength. I am just taking, and you just come inside. Now I will just press it down. You also hold it. Okay, ready? Don't let it go down. Okay. So I am putting much pressure. I am giving much pressure, and it's not going down. So this is the proof that energy is flowing. Now, just Sometimes you have a bad feeling. कभी कभी होता है. You feel bad sometimes. You also feel bad sometimes. Not at all. No anger. Anger comes. Okay. Anger. Do you become angry sometimes? Okay. Just close your eyes. Just close your eyes and recall any moment of anger. Just recall that video. Recall that scene. Recall that scene. Do you recall that scene? Okay. Can open your eyes. Okay, fine. So now the moment you recall, what happens? The energy finished. That is emotional MCB we switched off, and the energy just stopped flowing. And the proof, just do like the same thing which you did. Just do it. Now I apply the force. Now I do with the one finger. You see. Do you feel energy low? So, and see, the energy goes down instantly. Just like this. On this side. Ready? Ready? Right? So you can see the energy finished. Just your thoughts. So that I learned that why there is a disease. Because I told you all organs can be connected to the wire. That is bioelectrical wire, nervous system. And this nervous system carry energy into each organs. So each organs needs minimum amount of energy for function. And if we keep on thinking of what happened in the past, why it happened with me, we recall the past anger or negative emotions, then the energy cannot flow freely into the organs and organ becomes sick. That is the root of diseases. So spirituality means keeping your mind always balanced and filled with the right emotions of truth, love, peace, happiness, power. That is spiritual. That is true practice. And when we are not practicing spirituality in our life, our organs become sick. We become diseased. So real spirituality is this. And this I learned, and when I started practicing, I became alright, and the doctors left the hope. They saw the miracle in my life. So now this condition, I tell you, this condition will remain for minimum 3 hours. You know? The moment you recall the past, your energy is blocked for 3 hours. 3 hours. If something recall, it will block for the 3 hours. So whole day will be spoiled, and whole day you will be feeling the low. Okay. In that moment, if I ask him to feel good also, let's see what happened. Okay. Feel good. Close your eyes. Okay. So they thought the good moment. Let me see whether energy increased or not. energy didn't increase because it is very easy to destroy the things. It is very difficult to make the things. So if you think bad and if you ask to think good, it never happens. And energy doesn't flow. It takes you its own time of 3 hours automatically. Understand? So sometimes what people say, okay, it is a glass of water, okay, this is good water, okay? I am giving. Have this water. थोड़ा सा छोड़. Take this water. Or this. Okay. So why I am giving the water? Because when you are angry or something happened, people give you the water. Take water, cool down.
Have a glass of water.
Have a glass of water. So I have given this water and I will see if it is any cooling down or not. So there is no cooling down also. We'll see physically also. Just do like this. Ready? So there is no energy. After drinking water, you also do this. Come inside. Come inside. Ready? Okay, fine. We'll see the physical flexibility also. Just do like this and look straight and just flex. Do the flexibility. So you can see. Keep it back. Keep it back. Keep it back. Keep it back. You also keep it back. So you can see this is the level of the flexibility at the present energy level. Okay, fine. Okay. Now what to do? Then what is the practice of spirituality? You see, why this water? This is your water now. Why this water did not work? I'll check the energy of the water. So there is no energy in the water. Why there is no energy in the water? Because you know the nature. Each and every matter had the nature. Okay. So the nature of the water is what? To flow. When water is flowing, water has the energy. When water is not flowing, water loses the energy. That's why there is no vibration in the water. Okay. So in the spirituality, you can transfer the energy to the water. Our brain and mind, if it is powerful, then it can vibrate it. Okay. So now I will transfer energy into this water. Okay, because our body is made of water, and our mind can transfer the energy into the water, and the same water will be vibrating and will work like a miracle. It will do what it does. What cannot happen in 3 hours, that will do in 3 minutes. I'll do it further.
Oh, check it. Check it is together.
But that is a spiritual water. It's not a spiritual water. That is spiritual water.
So I just transfer the energy to the water and I will show you. Now can you see? Can you see? Now there is no deviation. Now if you drink the same water, you will say your energy will be restored instantly. Okay? Happy with this? Okay? Now you see. So energy is restored. Now earlier, from here there was a deviation. Now the energy is fully restored. Okay. We'll see physically now. Okay. आप वैसे ही करेंगे आपको. पहले ऐसे पहले flexibility. Just look and move your hands. Move it fully back. Move it fully back. It's more. Okay. Move it fully back. There is more. Now do like this. Okay. Now do like this. नहीं अभी ऐसे करते अभी मैं करूँगा अभी आप ताकत लगाएंगे क्योंकि can you see now? Can you see earlier it was just going down. After this, okay. Can you see? Can you see? So the energy instant restored. So spirituality we can practice in our life so that our energy always remain higher. Our spirituality goes down when we go against of the 7 essence. That is why that's called sato gun. What is sato gun? The 7 quality, the essence. What is? The bliss, the truth, peace, love, joy, purity and willpower. These are the only 7 pillars of the spirituality, and we can practice in our thought first. Keeping these things in our thoughts is the spirituality. Thank you. And when we are taking the water, taking the food, we must give them the vibration. Because today water is gel, water is not flowing. So water has no energy. Our duty is to transfer the energy to the water, then drink it. Okay? Then this water will be helpful and will remain healthy.
How to do that?
Huh?
How to do that?
How to do transfer energy to the water? Okay, if you have the 5-10 minutes more, then I will teach you. You have?
What does the organizer say? Do we have or no?
I'm so sorry.
Then teach in the after the session. After the session. Yeah.
After the session,
After the
yes.
session.
Okay, fine. Thank you.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Very
So that's why I named this as a seek for solutions. Seek for why I say it is seek for solutions, because these all things I came to know from through the divine, and I practice it. Sikfa it is written. S stands for spiritual, I stands for incorporeal, G stands for God, F stands for Father, A stands for Almighty. So what I saw the divine, it was a spiritual light. It was incorporeal. I did not see any form of that divine. It was totally pure in light form, and that is the God, that is the Father, that is the Almighty, and solutions for health and happiness for everyone. So this is the solutions I came to know, and that solution is known as psychoneurotics. Okay? Thank you.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much.
Maybe ask all the panelists to join me up here. You can stay here, please. Come back. And now, thanks to all the speakers respecting the time, I would like to open the floor because I think there are many interesting questions to be asked to all the speakers, in particular how to combine, I think, different aspects that were given from law in art and in science, science and religion, law as itself, the role is very interesting, and then finally the demonstration, where I would also like to extend the question already, how could we energize, like through the law maybe, a whole society, the whole global community. But I don't want to ask the questions, I would like to open the floor. So who would like to ask the first questions, please? Yes, please.
Thank you so much. My first query is to Leonie, that you presented a little bit about the sovereign, the movement, the sovereign movement. Now, the idea of the sovereign in modernity has a kind of self-sufficiency built into it. It is also associated with a cult of mastery. But in the Indic tradition, the idea of Swaraj, for example. Now, Swaraj also has an element of sovereignty, but it does not necessarily imprison within a logic of exclusionary sovereignty. In fact, there is a deep problem with the idea of sovereignty at the level of self and nation state. So I was wondering how you would kindly help us to understand what is the meaning of sovereign in this movement.
Does it work? I'll try to do it like this, or maybe there's another microphone. Oh, yes, it works. Well, maybe you can first explain a little bit more what the problem is with the notion of sovereignty in the tradition that you described, because I don't...
No, in the tradition of sovereignty itself, for example, the notion of the sovereign individual in modernity is very exclusionary, and it is very power-driven. Similarly, at the level of nation states, sovereign nation states, they pride themselves on monopoly of power to kill others. Therefore, there is a deep problem with the idea of sovereignty as not having the will to share with others. So therefore, how do we address this challenge of cult of mastery and exclusion in the discourse and practice of sovereignty at the level of state, self and society in modernity?
I think first of all it's important to understand that these individual sovereigns, they really apply the term of sovereignty to the individual and not to the state. And so it's a different interpretation. And it does stand for self-mastery, and there is the reason that I had these two images of the conspiracy theorist on the one hand, the more angry type of sovereign, because if you read all the sources that I've read to study this subject, you will see that there is these two tendencies in the things that you read, and one is very angry, very much turned towards the outside evil world that is trying to control us. And there, I think in this direction you do find traces of what you said, the war-driven type of, we can, the mastery, the more, it's a little bit more aggressive, I think. Whereas the other type of sovereignty is more turned inwards and it's about controlling yourself, reigning over your own, the mastery over your own sovereign body. So it more has to do with leadership, taking charge, taking responsibility. And these sovereigns, they truly believe that if we find that sovereign nature that we all have, that we are all born with, that will immediately lead us to these higher truths of respect, love, responsibility. So there is yeah, we see these two directions, and I couldn't really answer the question myself in the end. So it's interesting that you ask. So I think it remains a problem, but yeah, there's two ways of dealing with it. If I can add something to that, that also relates to the energy thing and negative emotions and such. What I found out is that the psychological research that has been done on conspiracy thinking has shown that people that have a lack of control, feelings of lack of control over their own life, feelings of lack of control over their own processes in life, they tend more towards conspiracy thinking. So their focus is more on the outside world and how the outside world hinders their freedom. But the interesting thing is, as soon as the conspiracy theory is integrated or enhanced, this feeling of lack of control doesn't go away, but it only gets worse. And so we would expect, you know, we turn to a conspiracy theory because we feel lack of control, and maybe we will regain that feeling of control over our own life because we have an explanation for it. But it does the opposite. Maybe that is a nice...
Can you express it? Can you say self-assertiveness regarding
So sorry, I'm so sorry I'm interrupting you. But
No, one
sorry.
no.
We have to carry the...
No, one second actually.
Dr. Jain, I'm so sorry.
No, because he wanted to just have an answer for that.
Maybe we can have it over the stage.
Oh, sure. No. You mean to say it was a self-assertiveness for as an answer for sovereignty you want? Self-assertiveness. Is your sovereignty means self-assertiveness?
Self-assertiveness.
Assertiveness.
Oof.
Okay, we'll discuss it then.
I would like to thank actually all the speakers. Please, conclude this. Time constraints, we have to follow the